I would like to welcome you to the 6th International Congress Against Military Bases and War. This is organized by the Network Against Global Military Bases, which was founded here in 2018 in Kaiserslautern. The Congress is organized by Aktiv für den Frieden, which is from Stop Ramstein, and the European left. And at this point, I would like to thank you very much for the strong support of the European left. Without the support, we couldn't do such congresses. This Congress has a focus on military bases in the world, and especially military bases in the Ukraine conflict, in the Ukraine war. Without military bases, war wouldn't be possible. That is why the closure and the conversion of the spaces is fundamental for the peace movement and for us. We have in the world about 900 to 2,000 military bases, and the USA have 800 of it, so all over the world. And these bases are legitimized by treaties, by the stationing states. And you can terminate these treaties. And that's why we're here, because you can do it also in Germany. And then the USA military must close the Air Base Ramstein in 2 years. So I'm moderating the first panel. Let me introduce the panelists. Karl-Heinz Peil from the Friedens and Zukunftswerkstatt. Reiner Braun, he's from IPD. Right, IPD? Yes. And Claudia Haydt, she's vice president of the European left. And we would like to talk in this panel about military bases in Germany and in the world, and which what these military bases means for the Ukraine war. And we start with Karl-Heinz Peil. He is going to give us an overview about the military bases in Germany.
Okay, well, what you see here is a mixture of total overview with all foreign military bases in Germany in the picture left, and the description is focused on US locations in Germany. We have in Germany not only US military bases, but also a few British bases, but it's almost with no importance anymore. And we have some locations with a mixture, which it is mixed. For example, command center dedicated to NATO, and some German Bundeswehr locations with presence of US military. The US military staff in total is officially 38,000, and it's, by the way, the same figure like the military staff in South Korea, and only in Japan this figure is a little bit higher than in Germany and South Korea. To give a total figure of the whole US personnel in Germany, it's complicated. You have to count family members, civil employees, service staff, and service provider, and also NSA, CIA, and so on. But we have to say the whole number of US persons are double than the military staff. The main locations are in Rheinland-Pfalz, and you can see the figure for US garrison Rheinland-Pfalz. It includes also 2 locations in Baden-Württemberg, Mannheim and Germersheim, and with approximately 50,000 US persons. And the second main location is the US garrison Wiesbaden. And the basic structure of this location is you have some command centers, and you have mentioned the most important, Stuttgart, Eucom and AFRICOM, and Claudia will say a little bit more about the political function of these locations. We have in Wiesbaden the headquarters of the US Army Europe and Africa. This location was until 2012 in Heidelberg, and then it was concentrated in Wiesbaden, and it's a more operational structure. And in Ramstein, we have a mixture of some operation from command centers and operational staff. And furthermore, we have training areas. Then the logistics centers where nobody knows what's going on with hazardous materials. Also vielleicht passt jetzt auf Deutsch. Also sind Giftstofflager. In Germersheim gibt es eine Bürgerinitiative, die sich dagegen wehrt, weil sie nicht weiß, was da alles vorhanden ist. Ähnliches wurde aus Dülmen in NRW berichtet. Also das vielleicht nur mal am Rande. The military logistic, which is especially important for the Ukraine war, is located in Ramstein and Mannheim. And a special topic is the drone war of the USA military, with the locations Ramstein, Stuttgart, and Wiesbaden with different functions. Here, it's a more comprehensive overview. Tells us the training areas and the main locations for the US Army. Also Wildflecken ist also ein Bundeswehrstandort, aber wird auch intensiv genutzt, also auch für den Ukraine-Krieg, für die Ausbildung von ukrainischen Soldaten, also von Bundeswehr und US-Militär. Okay. Wiesbaden-Erbenheim is the headquarters of the US Army in Europe and Africa. And here you can see the official mission and what's going on in Wiesbaden-Erbenheim. We don't know exactly. The main information we have got from the local newspaper, and this newspaper is according to New York Times. And there are some hundred military personnel to take care of training Ukraine soldiers in Wiesbaden, and the whole figure of Ukrainians was 2,000 up to the end of 2022. Okay, that's only a picture. Hohenfels, a main training area for tanks. Concerning Stuttgart and the Eucom and AFRICOM, Claudia will tell us more. Here, only a quick overview. Eucom, it's responsible for the whole connections to all NATO members, and in this case, especially to the new members, Sweden and Finland. And Africa, it's comparatively new. It was established 2008, and they have contacts to different countries in Africa, and the US Army tries to be present in Africa. Also, there's a lot of resistance in African countries. And last not least, in Stuttgart, there's a Eucom Center of the NSA. Okay, concerning the US garrison Rheinland-Pfalz, Reiner will say more about it. I can say some interesting details concerning Mannheim. You know, until 2012, the US Army was located in Heidelberg and Mannheim with the headquarters, which now is located in Wiesbaden. And after 2012, most locations in Mannheim could be switched to civil use, and we are talking about conversion of military area, which are required from local authorities for housing buildings, commercial areas, and so on. And the only area which was not switched for civil use are the former Coleman Barracks. And it's a very big area next to the Autobahn railway station. And now it's used as Coleman worksite. What you see on the right is a Google Earth picture you get when you have a look in Google Earth. On the left is a whole restricted area. And it's very interesting to give you my own impression. I had a visit with two friends from Mannheim to have a look to the Coleman working site. And on the public street, you could see a convoy, a truck ready to go to Poland, also Ponton Bridge, and Pionierpanzer, also das englische Wort jetzt nicht. And then another detail is also very interesting. Of course, it's forbidden to make pictures from military sites. And when you go to the fence, you see a plate, no photograph, it's forbidden. And of course, it's not worthwhile to make forbidden pictures because you can't use it, because it's you can trouble, and it's totally unnecessary. And I had a look Google Earth to historical pictures. You know, in Google Earth, you can not only see actual satellite pictures, but also pictures from the past. And it was interesting to get two pictures, to get pictures from 2021. And I've made 2 copies and 2 downloads from these pictures. And now when I prepared this session, I had a look to Google Earth again, and these pictures were missing. Yeah, and when you try to get historical pictures from this area, you can only see this one, an empty space, nothing else. Yeah. You know, the other side has a detailed look to our activities. This is my opinion. And the only explanation. And here you see a huge amount of armed vehicles who are located temporary for maintenance, and then they go back to East Europe. Okay, and at last, 2 years ago, we made this this website, Visual Bases, also with support from the European left, and there you can get detailed looks to maps with all restricted military areas and satellite pictures, and there you can get more information about it. Okay, Reiner, when it's your turn, I go back. US Garrison, Rheinland-Pfalz.
Yeah, thank you, Karl-Heinz. Welcome, all of you. You know, I will concentrate my speech on the Ramstein Air Base. I think you all know, and we discussed it and protested here several times against the drones, against the military defense system, and the coordinating role the Air Base has for many, many interventional wars all around the world. But since a little bit more than 1 year, this Air Base has a new historical, absolutely new specific role. It is the coordinating center of the NATO engagement in the Ukrainian war. In the Air Base, in May last year was founded the so-called Ukrainian Contact Group, which are the Minister of Defense, partly the foreign ministers, and their staff, above all military staff, for discussing the NATO engagement in the Ukrainian war. They are developing their strategy, their tactics, their engagements in these contact groups. It's a contact group of all 32 NATO countries and the strongest allies of NATO in other parts of the world. In this case, above all, Japan and South Korea, which are present normally with a vice minister of defense. This coordinating committee is responsible for everything NATO is doing in the Ukrainian war. And the interesting point, who is chairing this meeting? Who is inviting to this meeting? It's a meeting in Germany, I think. Invited to the meeting do the Minister of Defense of the United States of America, Austin. He's also chairing this event. So much to the sovereignty of Germany in this case. At this, on the first press conference, also the highest commander of the US Army, Mulai, reflects to the problems they have with the war, that he believes that they could not be successful at the end, and he reflected to all the problems they have. So Ramstein is the center of a new war, and frankly speaking, it's from German soil. Germany is a part of this war. We have this scientific study from the German Bundestag, which says they are partly a part of this war, but when the war is organized, trained, strategically developed, what is this? This is war engagement. So I think this is again a line. What's happened now from these airports in practice when they don't develop their strategy? Practice first is, it is a logistical center for all kinds of transport of military equipment to Poland and to the border of Ukraine. Tanks, munitions, weapons, drones, whatever Ukraine is buying by NATO or by the European Union, transport is organized about the logistical center in Ramstein. That is the reason, and I think you all recognize this during the last days, that the planes are not flying every 15 minutes, but they are flying all 2 minutes and sometimes even every 1 minute to make all these transport equipment. But it's not only the transport of logistics and equipment, it is also the transport of the personal staff of NATO, which is engaged in the Ukrainian war. They don't send soldiers. They send the military advisors to the Ukrainian army and to the Ukrainian president, to the secret services of Ukraine, and to the strategic coordinating center of the Ukrainian war, military and politicians. So these officers from the NATO country, mainly US, but also Great Britain and partly Germany, are trained and prepared for the work in Ukraine at the airbase Ramstein. And this is also the way back. The people, these officers are coming back to Ramstein, and by, I have to say, by Russian media, they also were saying, I cannot prove this, that in the minimum 10 of these officers were coming back wounded and were put in the hospital here in Ramstein.
Landstuhl, yeah.
In Ramstein, Landstuhl, yeah. In Landstuhl, yes. So it is also, the third point is, these military bases is a coordinating center for the training of the Ukrainian soldiers and officers in Germany and in other NATO countries. So these officers and soldiers which should be trained, they are flying into Ramstein, and then they were divided in the separate equipments and military bases all around the NATO countries in Europe. So this is again an active role in the war. Next point is, it's not all what Ramstein is doing. It is the logistical center for observing the whole Ukraine sky, all the satellites control, every actions of the artillery, all the commands for artillery bombing is done by video and by satellite control in Ramstein. So Ramstein is observing the whole area of Ukraine, and over Ramstein, informations, detailed informations, I will not say military orders, but detailed information are giving to the command centers in Ukraine for bombing, for using artillery, for shooting, for changing the soldiers from one place to the another, for daily military purposes. That is also the role of Ramstein. And this observation is in Ramstein is great, is even a little bit bigger. They are immediately controlling the surrounding countries, like Poland, like Romania, to see what's happened at the borders. Are there any developments which are important for military purposes? And this is the new role of the Air Base Ramstein, and summarized, it underlines the importance on one side to do everything to fight for negotiations and ceasefire to stop the war, and second, to continue our actions for closing this horrible military base. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reiner. I would say the legal assessment of the war in the Ukraine. We will discuss this in the panel too. And we have a question in the chat. If your report, if you can get it as a PDF. I can tell you, we're going to publish the video online in a few days, so you can listen to it again. So next, we have Claudia.
Well,
the floor is yours.
dear friends, online and here in the room, it is an honor for me to speak here, actually again, on the question of military bases. And as Reiner has pointed out, what's happening here in Germany is crucial for the ongoing war and crucial for the question why there is no serious attempt of negotiations. Because sometimes it is said that diplomacy is the weapon of the weak.
Yeah,
and as NATO countries and the US think themselves very strong, and they are helping Ukraine to continue to fight this war, there is a strong pressure not to be seen as weak, not to be seen as engaging in diplomacy. And for me, this is a huge problem and a huge mistake. Because actually, I think you are quite strong if you are able to talk with your enemy. And this is what's not happening, and this is due to the situation here in Germany. As Reiner has pointed out, the training of Ukrainian soldiers is happening here. It's happening in Ramstein. It is actually led by the US command, the so-called EU command, European command. This is the major coordinating level. On the practical level, it's done in the Ramstein, but also in Wiesbaden. In Wiesbaden, we see this security assistance group, which was just, as already been mentioned by Karl-Heinz, built up within a very short time. 300 new personnel been brought here, new housing, new grounds for training. This is done with not only the silent consent of the German government, but with the active assistance of German government. Therefore, our defense minister, I should rather call him war minister, is very proud that Germany is the country which is doing the most training for Ukrainian soldiers. Wiesbaden alone is now coordinating the training on every given time of a huge, of 1 battalion of Ukrainian soldiers. It's normally 600, 700 soldiers, but it could be up to 800. And what is happening here in Germany, that those soldiers are being made battle ready. They are actually being prepared to kill and die, but they're telling us it's to make them battle ready. We're making them battle ready in Wiesbaden, Erbenheim. We are making them ready to fight this war in Bavaria, in Niederwöhr, and on many other bases. And without those bases, there would be a huge lack in training infrastructure for the Ukrainian soldiers. And I'm not telling you that Ukraine is not allowed to defend itself. Obviously, it is. But what is now happening is actually that those Ukrainian soldiers are used as cannon fodder. They're used as cannon fodder, not so much for their own future, but for the future of NATO, US, and European Union countries. They're used to get their agenda along, and not so much the agenda of survival of people in Ukraine, because this is not the case. What I'm told by critical people from the Ukraine, and those are, okay, I'm an anti-militarist, so the people I know are not like the average of society, but also anti-militarists in Ukraine. Even people who say we are not fighting this war, even not though we have been attacked, and this is something that we will never accept, that our country is attacked, but we will not answer by taking up weapons, we will answer by civil resistance. But they are telling me that those people who are now recruited for the Ukrainian army, sometimes it's 2, 3, or 4 days between being recruited to the army, sent to the front, and coming back in coffins. This is what's happening now with the support of NATO and with all the infrastructure we're given. I think we have to realize this. This is not done for the defense of Ukraine. This is done for the defense of NATO. And if we want to defend people in Ukraine, we have to focus on the negotiations and not on making Germany the huge training ground for the cannon fodder of this ongoing war. And as everyone knows, this war is just reaching a deadlock in every sense of the word. It's like going nowhere, because more and more soldiers see what is going to happen to them. They even risk to stay for long sentences in prison in Ukraine rather than being sent to the front, or try to evade the country, try to leave the country illegally. And now, obviously, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men who have left the country, although it is forbidden. And they face dire consequences someday if they come back, because they didn't want to be recruited to this war. Same goes for Russian soldiers. who even in a higher number have left their countries because they didn't want to fight the Kremlin agenda on this war. So if I'm asked if I have any allies in this situation, for me it's the deserters, those who avoid war, those who say it's not my war, I'm not going to fight this kind of imperialistic thing. But still, what we have to realize is that what's happening in Ramstein, in Wiesbaden, in the US command centers, it actually has a very clear agenda. And we see it if we look on this enlargement of the bases and the preparation of the structures. They actually had started before the war in Ukraine. All the major structures had been in place before the war in Ukraine. And this tells me that NATO countries have already known that they had reached a point of expansion and of imbalance that would no longer be accepted by the Russian side. And I don't want to apologize. I don't want to say it's okay what Putin's doing. I just want to explain the dynamics of NATO getting closer and closer and closer, and with more weapons and with more structures with regard to Russia. And finally, there was this one point that the US had in Cuba, where they no longer accepted what was happening close to their border. And as I'm not okay with both those developments as an anti-militarist, I can describe what's happened, but I also can describe what has to be done in order to avoid this situation. One of them is we have to say no. We have to say very clearly we don't want to have this ongoing war preparation here in Germany. We don't want the bases used in this way. So, for example, in Stuttgart, I'm living close to Stuttgart, in Tübingen, we have really nearly every month protests in front of the African Command Center, and the EU is at the moment especially in front of the EU command centers. And we have to get more people. We have to tell people that this will not make our security, will not increase security, but it will actually make an all-out global war even more plausible. And I'm just giving you finally one concrete evidence, and where you can see how dangerous the path is we are on. We all know that the INF treaty had was a very important step to overcome the Cold War. So that those mid-range cruise missiles and rockets were no longer produced if they could be weaponized with nuclear warheads. And this INF treaty was broken by Trump in 2019. Okay, he said he canceled the treaty, but if you cancel it unilaterally, it's broken. So he did break the treaty, and now we are in a situation of a new rearmament, like we've seen in the 80s, a second round of rearmament with those mid-range cruise missiles, artillery, and so on, and hypersonic weapons. And again, it's Germany which is playing a major role. This kind of, now it's called multi-domain task forces, which actually just means that war is prepared all out. They include mid-range artillery, for example, also hypersonic weapons, the so-called Black Hawks, which could reach from Germany to Moscow within 20 minutes. And if they are based in Ukraine, within 8 minutes. This makes it very clear that if there is one single mistake in a situation like this, the European continent, even the whole world, might no longer exist as we know it. So the shorter those ranges of reactions are, the more dangerous those weapon systems are. And again, yes, probably they will those hypersonic weapons will actually not be based in Germany, only coordinated and commanded from Germany, but they might be based at the moment not in Ukraine, but in Poland or in Romania or in Slovakia. Those are the countries, not Slovakia, Slovenia. No, Slovakia was okay. Slovakia was okay. Sorry. Both Romania and Poland are the mostly likely countries in which they will be based and coordinated from Ramstein and Wiesbaden. So we actually don't know how far this development is already ongoing, because the information we are getting is very thin on the ground. But I don't care how far this development is. Even if it's only to be true in 2 or 3 years, it's too dangerous to accept it. So we have to get people on board, majority of people in our country on board against this mid-range weapons, against this new round of armaments, and against the use of German bases for it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Claudia. Yeah, you heard it. It's a scary situation, and that's why we're here, to stop this insanity.